This is a Kinetic Blast build, taking advantage of the Doriani's prototype Mercenary tech. It's got great clear, damage, and survivability. This is a Tier 17 Strongbox map with all of the increased effect of explicit modifier nodes on the Atlas. The build has around 30 to 40 million DPS, 75% attack and spell block, conditionally 98% attack and spell block, 100% spell suppression, decent amount of armor, around 20-something thousand with Flasks up, and if you swap returning projectiles with barrage, it gets you a lot more single target, but it really isn't necessary. If you're someone who loves wand builds like me, this might be for you, but a word of warning, it's not necessarily a cheap build. The build is also entirely reliant on the Mercenary for damage scaling and requires a few expensive items on both you and the Mercenary. I would say you would want a minimum of 30 divines for the build. I swapped into it at around 80 divines of investment, though I've put a bit more into the build you see in this video. This build can be played either as a Gladiator or as a Champion, but you are going to be a duelist regardless. Champion is the much more expensive option, but it is nicer, and if you play as a Gladiator, then you can get everything done much cheaper. So if you play as a Gladiator, you would take Determined Survivor, More Than Skill, War of Attrition, and even though it doesn't do that much, you would take Gratuitous Violence. And then you could get Fortify using Forbidden Jewels, or just get more damage with 2 additional rare Abyss Jewels. If you play Champion, you get Fortitude, versus Strike Last to Fall, Inspirational, and Worthy Foe. And you would need to get More Than Skill using Forbidden Jewels, that would be mandatory. As a Gladiator, you need fewer block nodes. As a Champion, you need fewer accuracy nodes. But the Path of Building has options for both. Overall, the skill tree is spread very thin because we want lots of the block nodes at the bottom, while also wanting a lot of the wand nodes up top. There's still room for 2 cluster jewels. These are important for block because they both give us block chance. This one gives us 6% spell block. You can either, in this slot here, put in a Lethal Pride, which I have here, which I recommend, or a Light of Meaning, a lightning damage Light of Meaning, which is actually a little bit more DPS, unless you have a really crazy Lethal Pride with tons of double damage nodes. Lethal Prides can also roll +2 fortification, which is kind of nice, but most importantly, they give you lots of strength. So if you don't have it there, then you're going to need lots and lots of strength on your gear. And this build is kind of attribute and res tight, so suffixes are really important. We also use an Impossible Escape as one of our jewels around Rune Binder, and this gives us a wheel for spell block, which helps us to cap block and allows us a little bit more flexibility. So if you're missing a little bit of spell block, you can allocate some more nodes here. And there's this nice node here, Sovereignty, for increased reservation efficiency, and also gives us a little bit of aura effect. You can drop a node here if you have, like I do, a Corrupted Implicit on your shield. That gives you a chance to block spell damage. We take Iron Reflexes down here to convert evasion into armor. If we had a bunch of evasion, it would give us even more hit avoidance, but we actually want to get hit more often, so we can activate the Lucky Block modifier on More Than Skill. Physical damage mitigation is also always good. We get some cheap tattoos for cold resistance because we have plenty of dexterity. Again, Lethal Pride solves our strength problems, and we get most of the intelligence we need from the tree, though you need just a little bit from gear, or maybe like a extra jewel mod. We get around 1,000 energy shield using a high energy shield helmet, along with this mastery that says 100% increased energy shield from equipped helmet, so I have about 1,000. That and energy shield leech is pretty nice. Make sure you take at least one of these pierce nodes. You can take the second one if you want. I haven't noticed a huge difference since Kinetic Blast has ridiculous clear already, but that enables a double hit with Kinetic Blast. If attributes, life, or resistances are an issue for you, the amulet is a great place to get them instead of opting for more damage. So our Kinetic Blast links are as follows. We have Kinetic Blast, Sacred Wisps, which is great for clear and single target, Volatility, which allows us to take advantage of lucky damage from Perkle's Toe. We have Barrage, which is only optional, so this is for if you want some more single target. This can get you like 50-70% more damage, depending on if you have Dying Sun on or not. And then Returning Projectiles if you're not using Barrage, so this is great for clear. Awaken Elemental Damage with attacks, and Increased Crit Damage. So these are your 6 links, and these are your optional swap in, swap outs. The second one is just the same exact thing, but here, let's see, Explosions is selected. So that's how we calculate the double hitting in our full DPS. Our reservation skills: Tempest Shield for shock immunity and for spell block, Grace, which is converted into armor, Vitality just to enable the Watcher's Eye, though you could level this up and get some regen, which would be nice. Our Spell Slinger setup here has Tornado. Tornado calls for us, and there's a precision here just for a little bit of crit and a little bit of accuracy. This is the Corrupting Fever setup for the champion. If you are running as a Gladiator, then you would just use a cast 1 damage taken setup here with either Molten Shell, Steel Skin, or Immortal Call, since we do have some endurance charge generation. And then there is a Mark on Hit setup with Assassin's Mark. 3 link with Life Tap because it costs a lot. And then finally just movement skills: Shield Charge, Flame Dash, and faster attacks. When you use Shield Charge with Frost Blink, it is very nice since you can animation cancel with Frost Blink. However, I found that it's a little bit buggy, and sometimes you'll Frost Blink and completely lose control of your character for a couple seconds. This can really be dangerous on a build like this, where a degen can just really take you down if you're not leeching, so I prefer Flame Dash, even though I really love Frost Blink with Shield Charge. Okay, so for flasks, aside from the Dying Sun, you could also instead just use the Life Flask here, because this is only important really for Barrage. The extra 2 projectiles for clear is not that noticeable, but other than that, it's a Diamond Flask, Quicksilver Flask, Silver Flask, and Jade Flask. For suffixes, it's movement speed, crit chance, reduced curse effect, and evasion rating, but really, you know, the flasks are not super crazy. I mean, you can just kind of do whatever you want here. Kinetic Blast has horrible single target because there aren't great ways of getting flat damage in a wand build. The best ways to do it so far have been stat stacking builds that use items like Alberon's Warpath or the intelligence stacking mod on wands. We solve this with our Mercenary's Wrath Aura instead. Our Mercenary at level 83 can give you a Wrath Aura of around level 26. This gives you 23 to 375 flat lightning damage. You can scale this aura up with this item, 60% from a Crusader suffix on a normal staff, not a war staff. You could get it as a Corrupted Implicit on a belt, tripled here on the String of Servitude to up to 60%. And you can get another Corrupted Implicit on your amulet for up to an additional 20%. That totals to 55 to 900 flat lightning damage, which is equivalent to around 1400 intelligence from the intelligence stacking wand mod. So you're going to want to find an infamous Storming Zealot. So Storming Zealots are the only ones that can both use staves and also have Wrath Auras. And you're going to want to find a level 83 one, and that's only in a tier 16, or you could find level 84s, I believe, in tier 17 maps. The tier 17 ones, I believe, have a slightly better Wrath, but it's not a huge deal. We also use the Doriani's prototype armor on the Mercenaries, which reduces nearby enemies' lightning resistance to -200. And in order for our Mercenary to get -200 lightning resistance, of course, we use 2 reflected rings using the mist. So I recommend you make these yourself. The reflecting mist is pretty cheap right now, but of course, you know, just make sure you check the prices yourself. Our amulet is Perkle's Toe, which gives us a large boost to damage because our damage is lightning and has a large damage range. So lucky hits, really good. Also, lucky damage is rolled 3 times because of our shield, Azadi Crest, which gives us a triple roll instead of a double roll on lucky. Path of Building doesn't yet support this mod, so if you look at the Path of Building, our DPS should actually be even higher. Now, we are entirely reliant on this Mercenary for all of our damage. If you take away our Mercenary, we lose 90% of our damage. They literally multiply the damage by 10. So we need to keep them alive. Mercenaries naturally have pretty good damage mitigation, so it's very rare for them to be one-shot. But what I do see is their health bar slowly draining in maps, especially when there's a lot of stuff going on. To combat this, what you're going to want is to get them really good sustain. So what I've done is I've gotten my Mercenary 30% recoup on each of the reflected rings, and then 18% recoup from the anointment infused flesh on the amulet. So that's around 80% recoup. So if they take damage, they recover 80% of it over 4 seconds. You can also get a lightning damage leached as life mod on the gloves. That's an Eldritch implicit. And you can also get a little bit of health regeneration. I got some on the helmet. I got some increased life regeneration rate as well. And you can get that on boots as an Eldritch implicit. So once you have all of that, it makes them pretty damn tanky, and it's unlikely that they're going to die because they're recovering so well. They will die, eventually. If you run a reflect map, they're probably going to kill themselves, but as you saw in the tier 17 map, they don't really die very often. You'll notice in your Mercenaries stats tab that they have a ridiculous amount of life regeneration per second. This is a lie. This is only present outside of combat. The moment your Mercenary takes a hit, I want you to pause the game and check their life regeneration rate. This is gone. The 25% is gone. Any additional life regeneration that you get, of course, is kept. So in reality, your Mercenary has no life regeneration unless you give it to them. I'm assuming that did this so you wouldn't have to wait for your Mercenary to heal between packs. Now, if you're really scared, you can give them one of these. So this one, Eyes of the Great Wolf, gives you lightning damage from hits taken as another element. Mercenaries basically are impervious to damage over time. They can still tank Shaper Beams even after the changes made recently. So I've seen them stand in the Mana Siphoner rings, literally didn't move their health. You equip this thing, I doubt he's ever going to die. But especially with the triple lucky mod, you really don't want to lose out on Purple's Toe. Also ignore this instinct anoint, it's not important. That's just how I bought it as. Alright, to improve single target further, Kinetic Blast can also double hit, once with the projectile and once with area damage. So you see there, this tornado that spawns using my Spell Slinger, you can see that my Kinetic Blast is actually hitting it, and the explosions are happening around it, and then the projectiles are also piercing. And of course you need Pierce for this to work. If I turn off my Spell Slinger, no explosions. I turn it on, a bunch of explosions here. So an enemy directly in front of you, because when you cast Tornado with Spell Slinger, it casts directly in front of you regardless of where you're clicking, will get hit by both your projectile and by the area damage. So that's kind of a double hit, though the area damage is probably going to do a bit less damage than the projectile hit. So we get piercing from the passive tree. That mod actually doesn't exist as an unveiled mod on gloves or a craft anymore, which is unfortunate. As for charges, we get power charges on kill from the passive node here, Elder Power. We get frenzy charges from Mark Mastery here. We also get power charges from the quality on Assassin's Mark for single target. And then finally, you can get endurance charges on block, but that's just a 25% chance. Even though we're blocking a ton, it's not really guaranteed and it's not very consistent. I still think Immortal Call will be pretty good if you wanted to use it though. Because of Doriani's prototype, the character doesn't need penetration, so we use Abhorrent Interrogation. This makes enemies take 4% increased elemental damage for each withered you've inflicted on them. With our high attack speed, double hitting, and if we swap to Barrage, we can get to 15 stacks very easily, making enemies take 60% increased damage. We get a little bit more flat on our wand, on our chest, which gives us tons of flat damage, and then we have a bunch of Abyss Jewels. and they get doubled by Darkness Enthroned. On those jewels, you'll want to roll added lightning damage to attacks, added lightning damage to wand attacks, life, and blind is nice as well if you can get it, but you can also get it as a tattoo on dex notes, which we have plenty of. Kinetic Blast has increases and reductions to spell damage applied to it at 200%, so you want to get spell damage in as many places as possible. So the most important one is going to be the wand, which you can get tons of. So this one gives us a total of 127%, which gets doubled to 254% increased damage, which is enormous. And you can also get it on an amulet. If you get a rare, this is actually a prefix, I think, but it's only 30%. Mana cost is solved by 2 mana cost reduction prefixes on rings, as well as a mana cost reduction Eldritch Implicit on the helmet, and you can go for some mana cost reduction notes here. These aren't the most important, especially if you get a higher level one here. This is the lowest tier, but I have double damage here from my Lethal Pride, so I thought it was a good idea. As far as defense goes, we have around 75% attack and spell block. That is our main defense. The Gladiator Ascendancy node, more than skill, which we get on champion from the Forbidden Flame and Forbidden Flesh jewels. Now, no, those are expensive, so you can just be a gladiator. They give us lucky block if we've blocked recently. In maps, this is up all the time. However, again, the Azadi crest gives us a triple rolled lucky. So first of all, many of you know that lucky block is very powerful because of the shield's fallen, which sets your, well, it gives you minus 10% maximum block chance. So a 65% block chance with Svalin becomes lucky and becomes a true 88%, I believe, chance to block. Well, if you have a 75% chance to block, and that's lucky, it actually becomes 94% block. If it's rolled 3 times, that is no longer 94%, but is 98% block. Both attack and spell block. That is insane damage avoidance. But we can still get one shot. So to survive one shots, we have a pretty small health pool, 4k life, 1k ES. But we do have 100% spell suppression, we have fortify, and we have a little bit of armor for some phys mitigation. We have about 16,000 here, which can go up a little bit with flasks. You can obviously get more armor, sacrifice some damage. We also have Tempest Shield, gives us shock immune. Our Pantheon and our boots give us chill and freeze immune. We don't have immunity to ignites, but you can get ailment immune pretty easily because Abyss Jewels can roll shock avoidance, and a Storm Shroud Jewel can just give you immunity. You can also get the highest tier of Eldritch Implicit ailment avoidance on the boots, which is horrible to do if you've ever tried it. However, that alongside an Ancestral Vision Jewel and 20% from the passive skill tree gets you to 100% avoidance as well. But I honestly didn't really find it necessary. It wouldn't be, I died occasionally, but not really. And finally, you can get immunity to Corrupted Blood as a Corrupted Jewel Implicit. As I said, you die sometimes from ignites. You also die sometimes from bleeds. Damage over time is a weakness of the build, and it'll kill you eventually. But again, I didn't find it happen very often. They do have to damage you, or hit you to get the ignite or bleed on. So I thought I didn't really need it. You can obviously get more immunities if you're doing other content, like if you're doing simulacrums, obviously get ailment immune. Also, you could just not use the adrenaline. You could just not trigger it with corrupting fever, and you can just keep it off, and then once your health gets low enough from an ailment, it'll element cleanse you. And for sustain, we have a little bit of life and ES gain on block. We have 50% 50 energy shield gain on block here, and we have 30 life gain here. That doesn't seem like a lot, but when you're blocking 98% of hits, it is actually pretty good. Other than that, we have life leech, life gain on hit, and energy shield leech from a Watcher's Eye. That third mod for increased lightning damage is nice, but not really necessary. And we also have Instant Leech from the Mastery. But that's it. We don't have any passive recovery. Regeneration would be nice. Consecrated Ground would be nice. You could get a few more levels on Vitality. It would scale pretty well with the Champion Ascendancy point. But it is what it is. Not every build can do everything, unless you dump a million mirrors into it.